Hello and welcome to Cinecrisis. For me, when I think of Christmas, it's hard to not instantly think of some of the most iconic animated specials of all time. No studio cornered the Christmas special market better than Rankin, which produced a slew of stop-motion productions throughout the 1960s and 70s, creating inarguably some of the most timeless and classic holiday specials ever made, a few of which are still annually broadcast on the major networks to this day. The crown jewel and the first to give the studio their big break was the mega-hit classic Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, which premiered on NBC back on December 6, 1964. Although they did dabble in some traditional cell animation here and there, the hallmark of the Rankin style was their trademark animagic process, which involved intricate and carefully choreographed stop-motion of puppets. Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer adapts and expands the classic Christmas song of the same name and sets the tone and formula for which all other Rankin specials would follow over the years to major success. As the show begins, we are introduced to our host, Sam the Snowman, voiced by folk singer Burl Ives. While he may not command a huge following today, Burl Ives was certainly a big deal in 1964, and his presence and name recognition in this special for sure did wonders to help legitimize this fledgling enterprise and as well bolster the soundtrack and musical numbers for the special. He also sets the precedent for which other specials would follow, with having a high-profile star serve as the host and narrator. We're then introduced to Rudolph, the newborn son of Donner, one of Santa's premier reindeers, who's endowed with a unique specimen of a nose, namely one that's red and illuminates. This unfortunately brings shame to his father, who attempts to hide his son's deformity from the world. As Rudolph gets older, it becomes harder and harder to conceal his nose, and one day it's revealed to all the reindeer, who laugh and sneer at him when they discover it. Stricken with shame, he decides to run away from home. Along the way, he meets up with several other misfits, people society has shunned and who don't quite fit in, including Hermie, an elf who isn't interested in making toys but would rather be a dentist, and Yukon Cornelius, a prospector who commands a bobsled of dogs obsessed with finding silver and gold. Their adventure leads them to a variety of places, including the island of misfit toys and an encounter with the abominable snow monster before eventually returning home to Christmastown so Rudolph can reunite with his family and embrace his ultimate destiny to lead and navigate Santa's sleigh on Christmas Eve. Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer as a concept was first created back in 1939 as a storybook by Robert L. May and published by the department store Montgomery Ward. Later in 1949, May's brother-in-law, Johnny Marks, wrote a song based on the story, which was recorded by Gene Autry and went all the way to number 1 that year. Years later, producer Arthur Rankin Jr., a neighbor of Marks, convinced him to let his studio expand the song into a 1-hour animated special, with funding secured by General Electric for around $500,000, and thus the Rankin Bass empire was born. There are a number of reasons why Rudolph works so well, not just as a product of that particular time period, but why it persists as such a venerated classic. Music is a huge part of that, and the special boasts several iconic songs written by Rudolph author Johnny Marks, including A Holly Jolly Christmas and Silver and Gold, as sung by Burl Ives, and the haunting but enchanting The Most Wonderful Day of the Year, sung by the inhabitants of the island of misfit toys. That leads directly to a second aspect of why the special succeeds, and that's the natural expansion of the mythology of the song to allow for a more well-rounded story, a model that will be followed by all other Rankin Bass productions. And that's attributable to the strong work of writer Romeo Muller, who took essentially a 3-minute song and created an entire universe around it, but still hits all the important story points from the song to keep you hooked all the way through. Remember, in the Rudolph song, there's no mention of the island of misfit toys, no Hermie the elf, no Yukon Cornelius, no abominable snow monster. These now iconic Christmas characters all came directly from this show. It's a truly impressive feat that there was this large a wealth of new concepts and ideas that sprung directly from this special. Of course, another reason why I think Rudolph still resonates with people to this day is the underlying message and theme of the story, which is basically tolerance for people who are different and learning to accept people for who they are, even if they don't fit into society's boxes. For their first big outing, and as old as this special is, the animation in Rudolph still looks spectacular. There's an inherent charm to all these shows that utilize the animagic process, almost a childlike wonder of seeing toys come to life. As well, there's a fine balance between the characters moving just fluidly enough and still having that stilted puppet quality to them that makes you marvel at just how much craft and skill went into making this all come together. But it's the little quirks and offbeat moments that I really love in Rudolph, like Santa Claus being visibly bored and annoyed with the song put on by the elves. The fact that Yukon Cornelius carries a revolver in his belt, which would never be allowed nowadays. The cool elf with the sunglasses to shield his eyes from Rudolph's nose. Mrs. Claus constantly trying to fatten up Santa. And the fact that all the misfit toys today would be considered more desirable because of their uniqueness and variation are just some that come to mind. And then there's the voice cast, particularly two that just sound very familiar, like Hermie the Elf.
Someday I'd like to be a dentist.
I know I've heard that voice before.
Now, let's see if my automated bloodhound gadget works.
Yes, Hermie was voiced by Paul Soles, who also lent his voice to the role of Peter Parker and Spider-Man in the 1967 animated series.
One up in web snappers.
The same goes for Rudolph's dad, Donner, who also just sounds very familiar.
Come here, boy. You'll be a normal little buck just like everybody else, right?
Spider-Man messed up any chance the authorities had of regaining the nullifier.
Paul Kligman, the voice of Donner, also played J. Jonah Jameson in the same Spider-Man series. A number of other actors from Rudolph also played roles in the Spider-Man show in minor supporting roles, including Billy Richards, the voice of Rudolph. So as the first Christmas classic produced by Rankin Bass, which set the tone and became the standard bearer for what all other specials produced by the studio would be, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer remains a timeless Christmas classic, featuring such a simple yet heartwarming story about inclusion and tolerance, and introducing a plethora of characters and concepts which has stood the test of time, and some very memorable and iconic musical numbers. Rudolph is for sure a must-watch every Christmas season. If you like this review, please subscribe to our channel, hit the like button, leave a comment below, and we'll see you next time. And Merry Christmas from Cinecrisis.